Said to myself, I literally said right before I started, I need to record, and then I forgot. Okay, but thank you so much, whoever that was. I don't even know. Okay, so I'm going to start this slide again. Like I said, a review paper summarizes research on a specific topic that you're working on, and it focuses on the trends or gaps in the research and where the research might go in the future. We also have what's called a case study. Like I said, I've done lots of case studies on students. So for instance, if a student is having difficulty in school, I would do a case study, really look at the student and what it is that the student is not able to grasp, and possibly looking into reasons why this is happening. Could be something from home. It could be, something socially, or maybe the student has some kind of disorder or learning disability. So usually case studies are a really in-depth study of either a person or an event. And it's so that you can actually draw some conclusions from that research that you've done on that particular person or event. We have reflective papers, which I actually like a lot. It reflects on experiences that you've had in reference to some particular event or subject. I kind of like to be reflective about things. We also have what's called an annotated bibliography, and this is a list of sources that have summaries and evaluations, and it usually supports research. A position paper presents an opinion on some really controversial issue, and it backs it up with lots of support and evidence. Proposals, my husband does lots of proposals. So you outline a project that you're going to be working on, and you include the objectives and the step-by-step process of how you will go about the objective that you're, trying to work towards. So it's like a step-by-step process. And then we have critical analysis, which examines things like books or articles or even art or music, poetry, things like that. And a critical analysis usually gives, like, you interpret things and you give it what you think it means and what it means for, other people or society or whatever the case might be. Okay, so the structure of academic papers sometimes is different. We have our title page, which actually this is a picture of a title page right here, where you can see, I can't actually see it very well, but it has the title of whatever the paper is. Usually it has whoever's written the paper, the professor's name, the date, just those kinds of important things. Here it also says institutional affiliation. So if it were for Harvest Bible University, you put Harvest Bible University. And that's usually one page. And then on a separate page, the abstract, which you guys know a little bit about now since we talked about it last week and you were asked to work on an abstract for this week as well. So an abstract basically is a summary, and like it says here, 150 to 250 words. Doesn't, it can be somewhere in between. It could be a little shorter or a little longer as well. And it kind of includes the important information that you're going to discuss in your paper. So it could be a research question, it could be steps or ways that you do something, the results of research it could also have, and it could have a part of, you can also have a conclusion as part of it as well. So the first thing we talked about, the introduction of an academic paper. This usually gives some background information on the topic. Remember, it has that grabber sentence. We're going to talk about that a little bit at the end. So I have a couple of slides on, grabber sentences and topic sentences. So usually it includes background information about the subject you're working on. Or it has a research question. In our case, we've been using thesis statements. So it also includes a thesis statement. And why is this paper that you're writing, why is it important or relevant to what we're learning or what you're discovering? How is it important to you? How is it important to maybe your church or your school or whatever the case might be? And you might have a brief outline of how the paper is going to be structured. Okay, some papers, some academic papers include literature reviews, not all of them, but a literature review just is a summary of the research that you've done on this topic, whatever the topic might be. It also might identify some gaps in the literature, like, if you were reading a specific article and you realized that the article didn't touch on something that was really important to the topic, it would identify that as well. And also it helps to justify the research that you are using in your paper. Excuse me. The methodology. So this is kind of a description of the research that you're doing, and the steps that you have taken or used to get to results for the topic that you're discussing. Could also be an explanation of any data that you have collected, and it can analyze that data as well. And are there any limitations on the topic or the study that you are discussing in your paper? So when you write an academic paper, very often you're discussing a specific topic that you've researched, but you also want to give the results of some of that research. You want to present that, and then you can present it by writing it out in paragraph form. You can use tables or graphs or charts, however is best to present the findings of your research. And then there's a discussion section. Very often, you as the author of the paper are interpreting those results and what you think it means. And you might be comparing results from one bit of research to another bit of research. And what happens because of the research and the findings that you have gotten or that you have found? What happens then? Like, what's next? and then addressing that specific research question or that hypothesis that, I think this is going to happen because of this. So you need to make sure that you're addressing that in your discussion section as well. Okay, then we of course need to have a conclusion, which is a summary of our findings, the research that you've done. You want to summarize it and make it so that it makes sense to the average person. You also want to make some recommendations for possible new research that could be done. And your final thoughts then on, how you feel about it, how it moved you, what it did for you. And then, of course, you always have to have your references, a list of your sources cited. That's typically on a separate page. And it's usually in one of the three styles here, APA, MLA, or Chicago style. I tend to like the MLA style. I feel like it's the most simplistic of all the styles. And people always seem to have such a hard time with the bibliography and the references. And, do you put the first name first or the first name last, and periods and commas and quotations and parentheses? People have a hard time with all that. So I try to make it as simple as possible. And then if need be, you can include an appendices, which is additional material that supports your paper. And so you might have found some research that was maybe 5 or 10 pages long, and it was difficult for you to summarize it because it was very detailed and kind of higher level thinking. So you included that as an appendices so that someone who might want to read more about that research can read that as well. Where are we here? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about developing a thesis statement. So the majority of papers and presentations that you're going to be writing for me, and probably for a lot of the Bible classes that you are already taking, you might need to be writing papers for those as well. So a thesis statement it's like the most important part of your paper. It really guides what's going to be following in the rest of your paper. So the first thing you need to do is you need to understand what the assignment is asking. So you need to clarify the purpose for your paper. So next week, you're going to be writing a scriptural essay, okay? So the purpose of that particular paper will be to, let's see what I actually wrote here. You're going to choose a biblical leader, and you're going to tell about why that person was so important during biblical times. So that would be the purpose of your paper. You have to think about, are you arguing a point, or are you analyzing a specific topic, which in this case you kind of are, or are you exploring a specific theme? Then the next thing, you're going to choose a topic, and I've pretty much chosen the topic for you. You're going to be writing about a biblical leader, and someone that interests you or that you think just did some amazing things or said some amazing things in his or her biblical time. And so you're going to select that topic, and then you're going to start thinking about it. How can I narrow that topic down into something a little bit more specific? So I have given you the assignment. You're going to write about a biblical leader, why this person was so important during biblical times. Perhaps it was someone, maybe it's your favorite biblical leader, and you need to tell me why. Why is that person so important? And then you're going to do some research. So you have to gather some information. Go and Google to your little heart's content. You're going to gather up information about that person so that you can understand that person better. And you can understand their perspective in why they did or said the things that they do. You're going to gather evidence. So you might gather some information from the Bible. You might gather some information from an article, maybe from a specific book. And then this research is going to help you narrow down how you're going to write this paper. So you're going to ask yourself a question. You're going to put the information, the research that you've done into a question that addresses the topic that you have chosen. So perhaps you've chosen, okay, let's just go. I've chosen Moses because, I don't know off the top of my head, but I've chosen Moses because Moses was a unique individual and did this, and this. And so you're going to ask yourself, why did Moses do those things, this, and this? And what did those 4 things do to help others, or to guide others, or to lead others? So that question that you're asking yourself is going to help you with your research, and it's going to help you to create a more refined thesis statement. Okay, then you're going to take a position. You're going to be that biblical leader's advocate. You're going to decide, how am I going to persuade somebody else that Moses was the most important person? Or what is your perspective or your argument on why that person was the most important person in biblical times? Then you're going to make it very specific as you can. So a strong thesis statement needs to be specific. And it's not just merely a statement put out there or a fact put out there. It has to have some kind of claim that others might be able to dispute. And you want to avoid very vague language. So I might say something along the lines of, Moses was a strong biblical leader because blank, 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 and blank. And so that's what you are writing your paper then about. In your supporting paragraphs, you are talking about, well, why was Moses strong? Why was Moses whatever he was? Okay, so those supporting paragraphs is where you convince me why your biblical leader was so important. Okay, so a common structure to present your main idea and then you're outlining your supporting points. So you might say, although, and then you might have a counter argument such as, although so-and-so thought Moses was weak, then you're going to put your main argument. Moses was strong because reason number one, reason number two, and reason number three. So I think hopefully this will help you, what I highlighted there. Hopefully that will really help you when writing your thesis statement. Then, of course, you write your paper. You put it down for a couple hours a day or so. You come back and you look at it again. You refine it, you revise it. You might need to switch things around. And then you really dig into your topic. So here is an example of a good thesis statement, although I do believe it's a little bit long, but I think it gets the point across. So the topic is climate change, which we've talked about before. And then the research question is, so this is, I did not come up with this example. I got this from somewhere online. But your research question is, what are the main factors contributing to climate change? And what can we do as a society to address them? So your thesis statement comes out of that research question. While natural processes contribute to climate change, human activities such as deforestation and fossil fuel consumption are the primary drivers necessitating urgent policy changes and public awareness campaigns to mitigate its effects. So it is a little bit long and a little bit wordy, but it really got the point across. So I really liked it. So just like the example or on the last slide here about how to phrase your thesis statement, this example does that. Uses the word while, and then it says, yes, natural processes of things happening in our world contribute to that climate change. However, things that humans do as well, such as deforestation, fossil fuel consumption, those also contribute to climate change. And what can we do about it? We need to make policy changes. We need to have public awareness campaigns. Does anybody have any questions right up till this point? No questions? Okie dokie, I'm going to move on. Okay, so academic style writing. Hang on, let me move this over a little bit. Okay. Formal language. So an academic paper should always be formal. You should not be using slang. You should not be using texting, what are they called? Acronyms or whatever they're called. Text, shouldn't be using LOL in a formal paper, that type of thing. You should also not be using contractions. So you wouldn't use the word don't, you would put do not, or for can't, cannot. So academic papers are formal. So I don't want to see slang and just colloquialisms that we use every day. You should also have an objective tone. So you have to make sure you're neutral, and trying, unless it's asked, you're trying to avoid your personal opinions, and you're trying to not use emotional language when you're writing. The focus should be more on the evidence and analyzing rather than your personal beliefs, unless, of course, it says include your opinions and personal beliefs. You should always make sure your writing is clear. Be precise with your word choice. I love to say that the thesaurus is my best friend, because I love to look up and come up with different words. If I'm using the word research in my paper and I've used it 15 times, to me, that means that I was lazy and I didn't look up to come up with another word for research. So your word choice should really vary. And then if you're using specific terms that the average reader or person may not understand, you need to make sure that you define those terms somewhere in your paper. You should, so thinking about, again, at the actual writing, your sentence structure, I like to see a varied sentence structure. Like I said, you can have a really simplistic sentence and then a very complex sentence. You could have a short sentence and then a long sentence and then another long sentence and then a short sentence. So you want to vary your sentence structure. You don't want them all to be 4 words. Mary went to the zoo. She fed the lion. The lion ate food. So those are all the same length sentences. You want to vary it. And that's what makes it more interesting to read. And it makes it it makes it a little bit more complex when you're changing up your style a bit from sentence to sentence. You should be using the third person perspective unless told otherwise. So the third person would be talking about he, she, or they, him, her, them. You don't want to use I or we or you unless you're told that's okay. So your writing you should not be making up research, of course, not making up claims that you have not read about. You need to support your claims that you've made with good, strong, up-to-date research and data, and making sure, once again, that your citations and your research is coming from credible sources. This helps to make your paper more valid, believable, and credible. Make sure your writing flows logically. In other words, you want to use transitions. We talked about using transitions at the beginning of each of your supporting paragraphs. That's always a great idea. If you have in the paragraph, a specific paragraph, maybe 4 things that you're talking about in reference to whatever your paper is about, you might put first blah, 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 then blah, 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 also blah, 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 and finally blah, 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 blah. So transitions tend to make your writing more cohesive, and it makes more sense. It's almost like taking steps. Hang on a second, I need to turn on my light. It's getting dark in here. Okay, back. Your academic tone. So you want your academic tone to be serious, unless of course it's a fun, comical, light kind of paper that you're writing. But your topic is probably serious for the most part. And the information that you've acquired from researching and from other sources has been done by people who have studied that topic. And you don't want to make light of the seriousness of their topic. You want to be respectful of the perspective that they have given you in their writing. You want to make sure that you are analyzing different viewpoints rather than all the same viewpoints. This kind of gives a different perspective in your papers. And I think that's what makes it a little bit more interesting. You get to hear different arguments or different viewpoints of people. And that makes us more well-rounded as people when we hear other people's viewpoints and perspectives. You want to try as much as you can when you are writing to distance yourself from the content. And this makes you more of an objective writer. So if you can take a step back from the research that you're reading, and you might feel really passionate about that research or the topic you're writing about, but if you want your paper to be more objective, then you need to take a step back and look at other perspectives rather than just one perspective. So you want to make sure that you're engaging your audience, which in this case is me, but pretend like you have an audience of 50 people and you're reading your paper. You want to make sure that if you have questions in your text, you want to make sure that those are thought-provoking questions. You don't want to just have a really basic question like, well, what did he do? I mean, it doesn't really say very much. It's not terribly thought-provoking either. Excuse me. You want to make sure that you maintain the same tone throughout your entire paper. So when you shift in tone, then your readers become confused. And it also takes away from the message that you're trying to get across in your paper. If somebody has to really think about, well, it just went from this serious tone to this really lighthearted and funny tone, somebody, like, the meaning behind the paper is going to get lost. And here we are again with our biblical citations. It's always tricky. So structure, a typical citation includes the book name, like you see here, John, chapter 3, verse 16. So of course, this refers to the book of John, chapter 3, verse 16. Sometimes the books of the Bible are abbreviated. That's fine. I'm not opposed to that. I thought this one was a little bizarre. The PS for Psalms, like Psalms is not that long, so. Okay. So I'm gonna go to this second side here first because I want to get back to the multiple verses. But the Bible exists in many different translations. We have here the 3 most often used. It's important to specify which version you're referencing if it matters to your context. If you are using more than one Bible translation, then it's important to put them both. And I would put them both separately because they are separate entities for the most part. Now, when you're citing multiple verses, you can use a hyphen for a range. For instance, here we have Romans, chapter 8, 28 to 30, or commas for non-sequential verses. For instance, we have here Luke 1:5 as well as 1:13. So they have a comma in between there. Any questions? Okay, so for biblical citations, there are some things that are just important and not as important if they're not like a biblical text. So the context matters. Understanding the surrounding text is crucial for accurate interpretation. So your context helps you clarify the meaning of specific verses. Footnotes and cross-references. So these kinds of things can provide some additional insight into other scriptures, which also could enhance understanding of that Bible passage or two. Also, knowing the historical context can also help us understand why certain verses were written and their significance. For instance, historical context, it's important sometimes to know, well, what happened before this verse? Because that might affect why this verse says what it does. And what happens after that verse? Perhaps what was said in that quoted verse was applied after that actual verse. So you have to think about what is the background and the context, that the verse is written in. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about your essay that will be due next week. So you're going to be analyzing it should say analyzing a scriptural passage. I'm going to change that because I don't like it. Okay, so you're going to choose your topic, which I've given you more or less, but you have to come up with the biblical leader that you feel, maybe it's your favorite, maybe you feel like it's that person was the most important. For whatever reason you want to choose someone, that's fine. So you're going to select that person and you're going to decide, well, what kinds of things were important about this person, or what made this person so important. And that's how, so you're going to ask yourself that question so that you can begin to research, why was Samson so important? What did Samson do? And you're going to look for passages that support your topic of why Samson, just as an example, was so important in the Bible. You're going to research then. You might look for different translations. Remember, I might see something completely different than someone else. So it's important to look at different scripture translations, not just one. Don't focus on just one. Sorry, I was just looking to see if I had any messages. Then you can look for articles, theological writings, commentaries, anything you can find about that person. And you make sure you are looking for those different interpretations in those commentaries and those articles and writings. You're going to create yourself just for you, not for me. I don't want to see your outline, but that an outline will help you organize your information. So you're going to, in your introduction, you're going to introduce your topic. You're going to have your thesis statement, like what we just went over, the main argument or the main interpretation that you found that you want to use, and why. You're going to outline then the significance of that particular scripture that you've chosen about your biblical leader. And then in the body of your essay, and I'm not telling you how many paragraphs you need to write. I want at least 5. So if you want to write more, that's fine, but no less than 5. You're going to discuss any historical or cultural or literary context of the passage or the person that you've chosen. You're going to break it down into pieces and explore the meaning, or perhaps there's a theme in one of those passages that Samson said. You're going to look for theological implications. You're going to discuss the various interpretations that have been made by different scholars or different writers. And you want to discuss how the scripture applies to maybe issues in society today or personal experiences that you've had. And you're going to summarize your main points and make sure you restate the importance of the scripture and the person. When you're analyzing, you make sure you need to support your argument. So use quotations from scripture or from articles or any other relevant sources that you find. Make sure you provide some examples to illustrate your points. And this helps to make your argument more believable. You're going to use clear and concise language. Make sure that each paragraph transitions nicely into the next paragraph. Make sure you cite your sources. Include any citations for biblical verses or any other references you use. Okay, you're going to follow, like I said, the MLA style. Make sure that you continue, not just once, not just twice, but many times. Review your essay to make sure it's clear. I always tell my students, read it out loud. You hear what it sounds like then, and you find your mistakes. Because if you're just reading it on your computer in your head or on a piece of paper in your head, you're going to read over those mistakes. But if you read it out loud, you find and catch those mistakes. And you get to hear, well, that sentence sounded really funny. I'm not sure that Professor Lewis is going to understand it. So I always tell my students to please make sure you read your essays out loud and find grammatical errors. If you use Microsoft Word, typically there's, I forget what it's called. Typically there's information about using like Grammarly, which helps you with your grammar and your spelling and your punctuation and all of that kind of stuff. Then you want to put your final touches in. Make sure that your essay has a really strong introduction and a strong conclusion. So that strong introduction really pulls somebody in. And that strong conclusion might leave them thinking, like, oh, that was a great topic. That was a great essay. I want to look into that even more. Make sure you check your formatting and your citation consistency. So the reason why I ask for your papers to be double spaced is because it makes editing a whole lot easier for me. It's really hard to edit when the lines are, all mushed up against each other. So do your best, please. Typically what I end up doing is, so when you send me your document, I have to, what do I do with it? Forget what that button says when I push it. What I do is I save it and I give it a new name because it tells me, it tells me what week, what essay, your name, and that I've included comments. So that's all in the title, very succinctly. But once I have the document and I've downloaded it, then I can change the spacing. So some of you might have noticed if you handed it into me and it was single space when I sent it back to you and it's double space, just for your information. It is 7 o'clock, well, 7 o'clock my time. So let's take like a 5-minute break. It's 7:02. So let's come back. Actually, let's just make it 7:10. We'll take an 8-minute break. I will see you in a few. Okay, I'm back. Welcome back. Let's continue. Okay. So an example of an outline, possibly, for a scriptural essay. Your introduction should have your hook and grabber. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Your thesis statement on the passage that you're choosing that reflects why you chose the biblical person that you chose. 2 or 3 reasons why it should say chose this passage to reflect the biblical person you chose. Some historical background about your passage, to do some research. Sorry, went ahead of myself there. The context of the passage. So like I said, what happened before, what happens after it. Analyze the key terms, for instance, love and eternal life within the passage. Break down those terms. What do they actually mean in the context of the passage? The significance of the verse in reference to this person. Maybe it's more than one verse, that's fine. Interpret, take 2 views of the meaning of the context of the passage and the person that you chose, explain those views. And then what is the relevance of the passage to you and others and to that particular person, biblical person that you chose? How does it affect modern day faith and practice? And then for your conclusion, you want to summarize, recap the main points. What is the lasting impact of the scripture or that person that you chose? Okay, so here I actually have a full essay here that I did not write, but I've read it several times, and I like the way that it is written and how it progresses through. So I am going to read this to you so you can get a little bit of an idea of what I'm expecting from you. How are you in your walk with God? So that's a great grabber sentence. That it makes you think a little bit, pulls in the reader. Do you believe that he has a plan for your life? The life of Samson, the book of Judges, chapter 13, is just one example of how God shapes us to do his will. First, God prepared the parents. Then he gave Samson many gifts. But he also gave Samson free choice to follow the ways of God or the world with these gifts. Like some of us, he chose to follow the ways of the world and suffer. However, God's plan will prevail no matter what choices we make along the way. First, notice that transition. First, God prepared the parents. Here in the book of Judges in chapter 13, we see that God gives life and knows our purpose in life. God is the one who instructs our parents and gives the ability to create life. It's up to us to choose our path in life. As a parent, it would be wise to choose the ways of God and not our ways. Here we have the birth of a special child by the name of Samson. God reminds the mother of her special prenatal care instructions and his calling in life. She was to keep herself on a healthy diet and to not drink wine or eat anything unclean, such as fatty foods that might affect the birth of this child. This child was to be a Nazarite, which meant that he would be consecrated to God from birth. God himself selected this child to be born for God's service for a defined period of time in life. God directed Samson's behavior, and God's instructions for this child were not to partake of the fruit of the vine. No razor was to cut his hair, and he had to remain free from impurities, including the touching of dead bodies. An angel of the Lord appeared and emphasized that Samson would begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines, who were oppressing the Israelites at that time. This divine direction indicated that Samson was chosen for a significant purpose, setting the stage for his role as a judge and warrior of Israel. God's sovereign plan and guidance in Samson's life, right from the beginning, highlighted themes of purpose, strength, and the struggle against oppression. As Samson grew, the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord moved upon him and gave him strength. God gave Samson many gifts of strength. He was to be a judge and deliver his people, and had godly parents who loved him. But God also gave Samson free choice to follow the ways of God or the way of the world, having these gifts. Samson, I should say, made a choice not to follow God's way and suffered the consequences. Remember, God gave him commands that he needed to follow. Did he follow those commands? Well, after many years had passed, we see Samson in a place called Timnah. Timnah is in enemy territory. He sees this woman of the daughters of the Philistines, and he wants her for a wife. Here is where Samson's poor decision starts. He begins to lust after women. As he starts to engage in these affairs, things don't really work out the way he thought they would. He finds himself in a vineyard, which is a sign of danger, and a young lion surprises him, and the Lord protects him as the Spirit came mightily upon him and tore this lion into pieces with his hand. After some time, as he returns to this woman, he stops to see the lion's carcass and finds honey in it and eats it. As he shares this honey with his parents, he never tells what he did, and he rebels. Samson's rebellious acts got him nowhere. He got into more trouble in his sexual lust for women. Samson disobeyed and broke the Nazarite's vow of God. He was a drunk. He misused the gift of strength. He never got married, but slept around with immoral women like Delilah. His biggest mistake was that he gave his heart away as he reveals the sowers of his strength to the enemy and his hair. As Samson created more situations in life, God was always with him. God is the one that was seeking to move against the Philistines. But it was up to Samson in his free will to choose which path to take. God has set the way, and he has given us the talents and is with us all the way to the end. As Samson continues to move in his ways, the enemy starts to work in his life. In chapter 16, we see Samson going to a place called Gaza to go see a prostitute by the name of Delilah. And Satan begins to go to work using this woman. Samson's biggest problem was lust. He loved this woman in a sexual way and believed that he would be able to overcome any attack. But as time passed, she pressed him daily with her words that he got so tired to the point of death when he revealed his heart to her about him being a Nazarite to God. God has departed from Samson, and Samson gives his heart away to lust sexual pleasures. And at the end of his life, Samson did save his people, as God prophesied. God used Samson when he was weak, being mocked, blind, and humiliated in front of the leadership of the Philistines. God intervened as he gives Samson his strength back and kills all the people at the temple. God was always in control. He is patient and slow to anger, and no matter what, he will be glorified. In the story of Samson, God has revealed to me that nothing has changed. Men today make poor decisions. We can't control ourselves, and we walk in the flesh, not the spirit, and have no moral standards. However, God will use evil for good, and he is always in control no matter what. He loves you and me so much that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Oops, already on that slide. Okay, so this is an idea, that was an idea of what I am looking for. So this is about Samson, and it discusses in the beginning, where is it? So it talks about Judges chapter 13, okay? And talks about Samson and how he was tempted by immoral women and how he had to decide what kind of choices to make, whether he was making a good choice or a bad choice. So it discusses that, and it gives us an idea of how Samson was with God, with women, with his parents, and what guided him through his life. And then, of course, it ended with this passage about Samson. And, and then there were some of my, or not my opinions, but whoever wrote this, that person's opinions in here about how God revealed to me that nothing has changed. People still make poor decisions. We can't control ourselves. Oftentimes we don't have good standards. So this is a little bit about, I just wanted you to have an example of what it was that we were, that I'm looking for. I'm looking at some of your comments. Hang on.
Lisa, I just was going to ask, so it would be okay where, you told us to write like in third person. God is revealed to me. Would it be okay to use our opinion at that point in the conclusion? It would be all right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let me just answer some of these. So the homework is you're choosing a biblical person and you're finding biblical passages about that person and using those biblical passages. So this, I think Melinda asked, using these biblical passages to help us understand why you chose this person to write about. So it's not only the passage, but it's the person as well. I hope I answered that. There's no limit on pages. However, I don't want anything less than 5 paragraphs. It can be more, but nothing less. Yes, 5 paragraphs. Uh, yes,
Um,
include, and Irma, you asked about a abstract and a bibliography. Absolutely, both.
um, I have a question too. You said that we're supposed to write why we chose this person, but I only seen why at the end. Why they said, however, God used evil for good, and He is always in control. That's her why. The
Yes,
person's why.
yes. So
Oh,
you can, if so, like I said, I did not write this essay, but
right, right.
you can include, sorry, allergies are bothering me. You can include in some of the other paragraphs as well, if you want to. Suppose you have this passage that's maybe 3 or 4 sentences long, and you use the first sentence in your first supporting paragraph. And then in that first supporting paragraph, if you want to you put your opinion in that paragraph about that particular passage, go for it. That's fine. And then maybe the next paragraph is the second line in that passage. And then you would write, you know, tell me about it, explain why, how I explain how this essay explained why Samson did what he did, and
Mm-hmm,
um, explain some of the context of the passage before, what happened before it, what happened after it.
mm-hmm.
Um, Lisa, I just also, like you said, go ahead and Google, like if I found a website that was specific to the about how would I cite that? Would it be the website address?
Um, Usually somewhere on the website, you can search, and you can search for, uh, I do this with one of my college students. Um, I will send everybody the name. I can't think of what it's called right off the top of my head, but there's a website where you can go and put in the actual website address, and it will give you the citation of how
Oh,
it,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
I can't
All
think of
right.
it off the
Oh,
top of
that's
my
all
head.
right. Well, thank you. That's cool.
I have
Thank
to
you.
ask my student because she knows. I can't think
Oh,
of what
don't
it's called.
worry. Don't worry. I was just wondering. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, 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 um, Professor Lisa, on
Yes,
on the website that I use, or about once I do my research, I read the research, but I put it in my own words.
yes.
I don't have to cite the website then, do I?
Um, if you're using any bits and pieces of it, yes, you do.
Okay.
But if you are, you read it, you put it away, and you completely summarize it on your own, then, but yes, you do need to cite it because you are still using that as a basis for your research.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions about the assignment? So we're going to still go over, I have a few slides about a couple of different things. So we're going to practice a little bit about grabber sentences. My gosh, I am just dying here. Itchy eyes. Ugh. Okay, grabber sentences. So a grabber sentence is the first sentence in your essay. It grabs that reader's attention and their interests. It makes them want to say, oh, I want to read more. It can be a question, it can be an exclamation, it could just be a plain old sentence. And it should include some kind of specific topic or belief or just something that's that just pulls you in. You saw how in that essay, where was it? How are you in your walk with God? I mean, that's a really good question. I think it makes people think and it pulls them in like, oh, I want to see what this is about. Where was I? Okay. Okay, so here are some grabber sentence examples. So the topic, suppose, is about the school dress code. An example might be, have you ever been totally humiliated in front of your friends because of something you were wearing? So that makes me wonder, well, what is this about? I want to know more. Or another example would be, what I put on my body should be my choice. I think those are really good grabber sentences. So here's the topic here is school lunch. Here's an example. Where can you always be sure to get the world's worst food? Or students should unite for the right to be well fed at school. So those are really interesting things that pull people in. Here the topic is high school dropouts. First example, would you spend every day of the week in a place that made you feel stupid and bad about yourself? Second example, no one should be forced to go to school. I'm not sure I agree with that one, but because I'm a teacher. Okay, so let's see if we can come up with some topics, some grabber sentences. So the first topic is the importance of Christian leaders in politics. Who can give me an example of a good grabber sentence or question or statement?
Should Christians be involved in politics?
Okay, good. Good question. And it makes you, I'd want to read more, about why or why not. Anything else? Can anyone think of anything else? Okay, well, let's move on to the next one then. It says, sorry, my dog's barking. Television shows have too much violence. What kind of grabber sentence can we use for that topic? Anyone?
Violence in television is changing society's view on crime.
Good. Good, well done. Excellent. Okay, now let's talk about thesis sentence. So it's located in that introductory paragraph. It states your position or opinion, whatever is being proved or supported or written about in your essay. So we're going to use the same topics here and come up with the thesis statement. So the school dress code topic, the example is schools have dress codes for some very good reasons. So that essay is going to write about those very good reasons. The topic here for school lunch, an example would be school lunch programs should emphasize good nutrition. That essay is going to be about why, the reasons why school lunch programs should emphasize good nutrition. And then the topic of high school dropouts, students should be able to leave high school whenever they want. I'm not sure I agree with that either, but there would be the reasons why, the essay would be about the reasons why students should be able to come and go to high school. So, a thesis statement for the importance of Christian leaders in politics. Can anyone come up with one?
Do the Christian politicians really follow the oracles of God?
Okay, can you turn it not into a question?
Oh,
Because this is a thesis statement. So a
Oh.
thesis statement should not be a question. But you can easily turn that. You can say,
And you say politics have always been a big part of the Bible.
Sure. You might even to lengthen it a
Or,
little bit, say
uh-huh.
while politics are while politics are not a favorite topic for many, um, politics have been around for thousands and thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
along that line.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
Kind of
say,
Um,
stretch it out, stretch it out.
could,
yes.
could you say politicians should always uh um pre- be be of Christian? Could you say politicians should always have um doctrine values of God?
Um, you could if if you can support it with evidence. Yes.
Well,
As long as you can
maybe.
support it. Your topic sentence, your thesis sentence, sorry, topic, your thesis statement or sentence can be anything as long as you can support it.
Okay, here's the part where I'm having problems. The thesis sentence and the topic sentence. I
Okay.
thought, okay, the
So
thesis
the
the
Yeah,
thesis
the
me
top
too.
statement, this,
the topic sentence is the topic of what you're going to write about. Like I just said, it is important that, like, say this is my topic. It is important for all politicians to uh, have sound doctrine uh and law leadership. Let's say that's my topic sentence, right? Because this is what I'm going to write about. Then the the topic sentence is it's almost the same thing, and I don't know how to split them apart.
okay, so your, okay, the way to explain it is, so your thesis statement or sentence is going to be written in your first paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always going to be the last sentence in your first paragraph.
Hmm.
Okay?
I'm gonna say that again.
Your thesis statement will be your last sentence in your
Uh-huh.
first paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Using a lot of last and firsts.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start each paragraph thereafter, for instance, your second paragraph where you're supporting your thesis statement, that first sentence is your topic sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, suppose I'm writing about school dress code, okay? And I say my grabber sentence. What was my grabber sentence about school dress code back here? uh, my grabber sentence is, have you ever been totally humiliated in front of your friends because of something you were wearing? Okay. And then I give a little bit of details about um, what it is that people believe, why people believe that a dress code is important. Okay. And then my last sentence in that first paragraph says schools have dress codes for some very good specific reasons. Then in my paragraph, my first supporting paragraph, I'm going to talk about one of those reasons. So I might say, dress codes for students are important because I'm trying to think of a reason. um,
They
because
they they um they um encourage order.
Okay, good. So that would be my topic sentence. So then in that paragraph, you're going to discuss how they encourage order.
That's That's the
Okay.
second paragraph is the
Yeah.
you're supporting what you said at the beginning.
Yes.
Okay, so going back to the topic sentence and the thesis, okay, you have a topic sentence, but at the end of that paragraph, you're going to state the thesis that really just reiterates the topic sentence, but gives it a little bit more meat of why you feel that way.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because you're stating your position or your opinion about that topic sentence. That's the thesis.
Absolutely. Yes.
So this is what I did, and let me see if I can find it. What I did, because I couldn't, I'm still having a problem with the topic and the thesis sentence because they seem to be both the same to me.
They seem similar, they do. But
Yeah, they do.
a
So what
thesis
I did,
statement includes more of a position and opinion, whereas a topic sentence doesn't include any opinion. Okay?
no opinion in the topic. In the topic, no opinion. But a thesis sentence has a opinion of why
Opinion
I'm writing
or
this.
right,
Right,
or
right,
a
yeah.
position that you are taking to prove or support in your essay.
Okay, I think I got it. The thesis
Okay.
sentence is the reason why I'm writing this.
Right.
Right.
Right. The
Right.
reason. Let me write that down because it's just and I've been
Well,
trying to
it
I've
is
been really I've been really
extremely
close.
tricky.
Yeah, and then the topic sentence has the points of why I'm writing
Yes, without opinion. Yes.
without opinion.
Right. Right.
It's not really even the points, right? It's just the topic sentence. This is your topic sentence, the subject. And then when you get down to the end of that paragraph, now I'm writing my opinion, why. And then the second paragraph is going to
Is
talk about
supporting it.
points.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
supporting.
your thesis statement is going to have your 3 or however many you
Yeah.
want reasons
Mm-hmm.
that you are going to support in the rest of your essay,
Mm-hmm.
in those 3 or 5 or whatever supporting paragraphs. Okay. So
I got it.
Daryl,
Thank you.
what you can do is just send me your thesis statement and I'll look at it. I'm happy to do that. I'll probably ask you some questions about it. Okay? Okay. So this is our homework assignment. So we just went over and talked about scriptural essay. So you're going to be writing your scriptural essay. You're deciding who your biblical person is that you want to be writing about, and you're choosing a passage from the Bible that supports or discusses that biblical figure. It should be at least 5 paragraphs. Make sure, like, copy and paste the Bible passage so I don't have to search for it and find it and when I'm reading all the essays and stuff. So copy and paste it and put it on a separate page, like at the end of your document. That would be super helpful for me. Make sure you have your resources. And Times New Roman. I actually changed the size to size 14 rather than 12. 12 is just really small. And my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. And double spaced. And what you're going to do is you're going to research that passage and that person and analyze it. You can use quotes from other people. You can explain the meaning of the passage. My suggestion is create some kind of just written, scratched out draft outline so that your information in your essay is organized. And if you want me to look at the outline ahead of time, I'm happy to do that. You do not need to hand in the outline to me, though. And this will be due next Wednesday. Please type your document in a Microsoft Word document, double space. Oh, see, I should be 14, not 12. And then attach it to your email to me. That would be super helpful. Questions, concerns, whatever. So please use me and abuse me. Just send me stuff and
Oh,
I'm
I do
happy.
have a question.
Yes.
You was talking about like when we use passages and stuff like that, like do it on a separate page, but you were saying what is that? Copy and paste? Can I just type it? I don't know how to copy and paste. I
Oh,
know
that's
that's sad.
fine. Sure. That's
I
fine.
know that's sad.
No, that's fine. I wouldn't know the difference when you hand it in to me. Yeah, do you have a Mac or a lap, what is it called, a PC?
Um, I don't know. I just bought this computer. My kids be helping me get on there and do stuff.
Okay. It's really easy, you know, like a Mac computer has a
No,
command.
this is not a Mac. This is a
Okay.
laptop.
So you would use control. There's a button that says control or CTRL or something like
Yeah.
that. Control, you would hold down the control and press. Well, first you would highlight what it is that
Mm-hmm.
you want to copy, and you would then press Control C, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you go into where you want to paste it, you put your cursor there and you hit Control V as in Victor, and it pastes it.
Mm-hmm.
So just something to learn.
Yeah.
Excuse
There's a
me,
lot of things I'm learning.
can you explain the MLA style? I'm not sure
Okay,
about
so
that.
so you're writing your paper, and in one of the paragraphs, you have a Bible passage, or a part of a Bible passage. It's not even a whole sentence or paragraph or whatever. It's just a little phrase, maybe, okay, which would be in quotations because it's said by somebody else. Behind that, like when the passage is finished, you put your period and your quotation marks to finish it. After that, in parentheses, you would put the book of the Bible that it came from. I don't know, example, Numbers, comma, no, Numbers, comma, the chapter and the verse. So suppose it's chapter 13, colon. So the colon is the 2 dots. And then say it's verse 2 or verse 2-3. Close the parentheses. And then at the end of your document, so if you look back, let me think, where was it in last week? I think it was in last week's, yes. Last week's presentation that I sent to you, I had examples of how to do the MLA within a paragraph, as well as on a citation or resource page at the end of your document.
Okay, I will look at it.
Okay, if you can't find it, let me know and I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. Okay? Any other questions? Daryl, you want to pray us out?
Oh, thank you, Lord Jesus, in the name of Jesus. I just bless you tonight, Father God. It is such a blessing to be able to come and listen to our instructor who is thoroughly prepared in the name of Jesus. We ask you to open our hearts and mind to her teaching so we could receive it and not only be readers of it, but doers of it. Let our writings be in preparation to show the world and teach the world your word, Father God. That's what we're all here for, is to become disciples of what you have made us to be for a purpose of the Lord Jesus. We thank you, Father God, for this time we spent together, and we praise and glorify you for your word. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Thank you, oh Lord
Amen.
Jesus.
Thank you. I will
Amen.
see you
Good night.
all next week. Have a wonderful,
Amen.
have a
I hope
wonderful.
we keep the same login, right?
Yes.
The same login, because
Yes.
I gotta be here. I know I was a little late today. I apologize to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're glad you made it.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Have a fabulous week, everyone. And I'll see
Have
you
a
next
blessed
week.
week, everyone.